The notification chimed on my laptop while I was reviewing quarterly reports. Bank alert. Hotel payment, downtown Marriott, $237 for a room I didn't book. My name is Grant Miller, and I've been selling real estate in this coastal Maine town for 8 years. I know every property, every price, every person who matters. What I apparently didn't know was my wife. Elise was supposedly at a client meeting. Marketing executives don't typically need hotel rooms for presentations, but maybe the conference room was booked. Maybe she was entertaining out-of-town prospects. Maybe I was an idiot. The front door clicked open downstairs. Elise's heels tapped across our hardwood floors, the same rhythm I'd heard every evening for 3 years of marriage. Tonight it sounded different. Guilty. "Grant, you home?" Her voice carried that artificial brightness she used with difficult clients. "In the office?" I called back, closing the banking app. No point confronting her yet. I needed more information. She appeared in the doorway, still wearing her navy business suit, the one that cost more than most people's rent. Elise had always been particular about appearances. Image was everything in her world of boutique marketing and social media campaigns. "How was the Henderson meeting?" I asked, watching her face carefully. "Productive. Really productive." She smiled, but her eyes didn't participate. "They're considering the full package for their resort launch." The Henderson account was real. I'd referred them to her agency 6 months ago. But their resort was in Bar Harbor, 40 miles north. The hotel charge was downtown, 8 blocks from our house. "That's great, honey. Must have been a long presentation to need a hotel room." Her smile flickered. Just for a second, but I caught it. "Hotel room? What do you mean?" I turned my laptop screen toward her, showing the bank notification. "This charge. From today." Elise stepped closer, her perfume mixing with something else. Different cologne. Not mine. "Oh, that. Yes, we needed a private space for the final negotiations. The office was too noisy." She was good, I'll give her that. The lie came out smooth as her expensive lipstick. "Makes sense," I said, closing the laptop. I'm sure Colin appreciated the comfortable setting. Colin Sharp. Her boss, technically, though Elise's agency was small enough that titles meant little. Mid-30s, gym-obsessed, drove a Tesla, and had the kind of aggressive confidence that made my skin crawl. I'd met him twice at company parties. Both times he'd looked at my wife like she was dessert. "Colin wasn't there," Elise said quickly. "It was just me and the Henderson team." Another lie. I could see it in the way she touched her earring, a nervous habit she'd never managed to break. "Well, I'm glad it went well. I'm going to grab a shower before dinner." I left her standing in the office, probably wondering if I suspected anything. The truth was, I'd suspected for weeks. Late meetings, weekend conferences, new clothes she claimed were for networking events I never heard about again. Elise had always been ambitious, but lately she'd been distracted, happy in a way that had nothing to do with me. In the shower, I made my decision. Not the emotional, confrontational approach most husbands would choose, something smarter, more thorough. I dried off and called Vivian Carter. "Grant, it's late for a business call," she answered on the second ring. Vivian was the best attorney in town, specializing in messy situations that required discretion. We'd known each other since college, back when she was studying law, and I was learning that charm and persistence could sell anything. "I need your help with a personal matter." "Ah." Her voice shifted to professional mode. "The kind that requires confidentiality?" "The kind that requires preparation." 20 minutes later, I'd explained the situation. The hotel charges, the lies, the growing distance between Elise and me. Vivian listened without judgment, taking notes I couldn't see through the phone. "How do you want to handle this?" she asked when I finished. "Carefully. I don't want to destroy her, just protect myself." "Grant, if she's having an affair, especially with her boss, this could get complicated. Maine is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can affect asset division if you can prove it. Then let's make sure we can prove it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. We talked for another hour, discussing bank accounts, property ownership, business assets. I'd built a successful real estate company from nothing, starting with a single rental property and growing to 15 agents and a portfolio worth $2 million. Elise had contributed, bringing marketing expertise and social connections, but the foundation was mine. By the time we hung up, I had a plan. The next morning, Elise left early for another client meeting. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then drove downtown to the Marriott. The desk clerk was a kid named Devin, maybe 22, with the eager helpfulness of someone still new to customer service. I'd sold his parents their condo 2 years ago. "Mr. Miller? Good to see you. How can I help?" "I think my wife lost an earring yesterday during her business meeting. Could you check if housekeeping found anything in the room she used?" Devin's fingers flew across his keyboard. "Let me see. Yesterday. What was the name on the reservation?" "Elise Miller." His expression changed slightly. "Actually, sir, the room was booked under Colin Sharp. But yes, there was a woman with him. Blonde, very professional looking." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Right, of course. Her boss handles the corporate bookings. Any luck with the earring?" Devin made a show of checking, but I barely heard his response. Colin Sharp had booked the room. Colin Sharp, who was married to someone named Serafina, according to the company website. Colin Sharp, who was screwing my wife in a hotel room 8 blocks from our house. I thanked Devin and walked back to my car, mind racing. The smart play was to gather more evidence before making any moves, but part of me wanted to drive straight to Colin's office and have a very direct conversation. Instead, I drove to my own office and called Vivian. "We need to move faster," I told her. "I want asset protection in place by the end of the week." "Grant, slow down. What did you find out?" I told her about the hotel, about Colin's name on the reservation, about the look on Devin's face when he realized what he'd revealed. "Okay," Vivian said. "Here's what we're going to do." 3 days later, Elise came home to find Vivian sitting at our kitchen island, sipping coffee and reviewing a stack of papers. "Grant?" Elise's voice carried a note of panic. "What's going on?" I emerged from the living room, where I'd been waiting and watching through the window. "Vivian's helping us with some financial planning. Tax season, you know." Elise's eyes darted between us. She knew Vivian was a divorce attorney. Everyone in town knew. "Financial planning," Elise repeated slowly. "Asset protection, actually," Vivian said, her voice professionally neutral. "Grant's been smart to diversify his holdings, but there are some vulnerabilities we should address." I watched my wife's face carefully. The color drained from her cheeks as she processed the implications. "I see. And this couldn't wait until I got home?" "Actually," I said, "Vivian had some questions about your marketing business. Income projections, client contracts, that sort of thing." Elise set down her purse with deliberate care. "My business is separate from Grant's real estate company." "Of course," Vivian smiled, "but you do share certain assets. The house, joint accounts, retirement funds. It's all connected." The next 20 minutes were excruciating. Vivian asked pointed questions about Elise's work schedule, travel expenses, client entertainment costs. Every question was perfectly legitimate and absolutely terrifying if you were hiding an affair. When Vivian finally left, Elise turned to me with forced calm. "Grant, what's really going on here?" "Exactly what I said. Financial planning." "You're scaring me." "Why would financial planning scare you?" She didn't have an answer for that, at least not one she could share. That night, Elise was different, attentive in a way she hadn't been for months. She cooked dinner, asked about my day, suggested we watch a movie together. It was almost like the early days of our marriage, when she still thought I was worth impressing. But I could see the calculation behind her smile. She was trying to figure out how much I knew and how much danger she was in. The next morning, I put the second phase of my plan into motion. I'd spent years building relationships in this town. Real estate is a network business, and I'd cultivated connections with everyone from bank managers to hotel clerks to gym owners. People talked to me because I'd helped them buy houses, find tenants, negotiate deals. They trusted me. Rico Martinez owned the fitness center where Colin spent 2 hours every morning. We'd worked together when Rico bought the building, converting an old warehouse into a modern gym with all the expensive equipment guys like Colin demanded. "Grant, haven't seen you here in a while," Rico called out as I entered the gym. "Work's been crazy. Thought I'd try to get back in shape." We chatted while I went through the motions of a workout, waiting for the right moment. "Speaking of work," I said, "my wife's boss trains here, right? Colin Sharp?" "Yeah, Colin's here every morning. Serious about his routine. Very serious." Rico's tone suggested there was more to the story. "Elise mentioned he's been working closely with her on some big projects. Long hours, weekend meetings." Rico paused his equipment cleaning. "Weekend meetings, huh?" "Yeah, she's been putting in a lot of extra time lately." "Interesting." Rico looked around the empty gym, then leaned closer. "Colin's been bringing a workout partner lately. Blonde woman, very fit. They use the private training room." My grip tightened on the weight I was holding. "Private training room?" "Yeah, it's supposed to be for personal training sessions, but..." Rico shrugged. "They're not doing much training, if you know what I mean." I knew exactly what he meant. "Thanks for the tip about the equipment," I said, setting down the weight. "I might look into personal training myself." "Anytime, Grant. You're good people." I left the gym with confirmation of what I already suspected, and a growing anger I had to keep carefully controlled. Elise wasn't just having an affair, she was flaunting it, using the gym's private room like her personal playground. The smart move was to document everything and let Vivian handle the legal aspects. But I was discovering that being smart and being satisfied weren't the same thing. That afternoon, I drove past Colin's office building. His Tesla was parked in its usual spot, gleaming silver under the autumn sun. I thought about keying it, slashing the tires, doing something immediate and destructive. Instead, I took photos of the license plate and parking spot. Evidence first. Satisfaction later. My phone buzzed with a text from Elise. "Working late again tonight, don't wait up." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "No problem. I'll probably work late too." But instead of going to my office, I drove back to the Marriott and had another conversation with Devin. "Mr. Miller, did you find the earring?" "Actually, yes. But I was hoping you could help me with something else. My wife's been using your hotel for business meetings and I want to surprise her with flowers. Could you let me know the next time she has a reservation?" Devin's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "I'm not sure I can share guest information." "Of course not. I wouldn't want you to violate any policies." I pulled out my wallet and extracted a $50 bill. "Maybe you could just mention it casually if you see me around town?" The money disappeared into Devin's pocket. "I'll keep an eye out." "Appreciate it." I left the hotel feeling like a character in a bad movie, bribing desk clerks and following cheating wives. But the alternative was sitting at home, pretending everything was normal while Elise and Colin laughed about what an oblivious husband I was. That evening, I sat in my office reviewing property listings and waiting for Elise to come home. She'd been gone for 4 hours, supposedly in a client meeting that should have lasted 90 minutes. At 10:30, I heard her car in the driveway. She entered quietly, probably hoping I'd already gone to bed. "Grant, you still up?" "In here," I called. She appeared in the doorway, looking slightly disheveled, despite her attempts to freshen up. Her lipstick was gone, and her hair was different than it had been that morning. "How was the meeting?" "Exhausting." The client had so many questions about the campaign strategy. Which client was this? A pause. The restaurant group, the one expanding into Portland. I nodded as if this made perfect sense, though I knew she was lying. Elise's agency was small, and I knew most of her clients. There was no restaurant group expanding into Portland. Well, you should get some rest. Big day tomorrow? Actually, yes. Another meeting with the same group. Might run late again. Of course it might. She kissed my forehead, a gesture that once meant affection and now felt like mockery. After she went upstairs, I opened my laptop and began typing an email to Vivienne. It was time to accelerate the timeline. Devin texted me at 11:15 the next morning. Your wife's friend made another reservation. Same room, same time. I stared at the message, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Not surprise. I'd expected this, but seeing it confirmed in black and white made it real in a way that speculation couldn't match. Instead of calling Vivienne immediately, I did something that probably wasn't smart, but felt absolutely necessary. I drove downtown and parked across the street from the Marriott. At 12:30, Colin's Tesla pulled into the hotel parking garage. 10 minutes later, Elise's Honda followed. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel before driving away. I'd seen enough. Back at my office, I called Vivienne. It's happening right now, I told her. They're at the hotel. Grant, I need you to stay calm and think clearly. What exactly do you want to accomplish here? I want to protect my assets and make sure everyone knows what kind of person my wife really is. The first part I can help you with. The second part could get you in trouble. What kind of trouble? The kind where you do something stupid and give her grounds to claim harassment or emotional distress. Maine might be no fault, but judges still consider behavior when dividing assets. I took a deep breath. What do you recommend? Let me handle the legal aspects. You focus on documentation, photos, receipts, witness statements, build an airtight case. And then? Then we file papers and let the system work. The system. I'd been part of the system long enough to know it didn't always deliver justice. Sometimes it just delivered paperwork. But Vivienne was right about one thing. I needed to be smart. That afternoon, I implemented phase 3 of my plan. I drove to Elise's office, a converted Victorian house that housed her marketing agency and 2 other small businesses. Her assistant, Paige, was at the front desk looking bored. Grant, what brings you here? Paige was 26, ambitious, and completely devoted to Elise. She also had a tendency to overshare when she was nervous. Thought I'd surprise Elise with lunch, but I guess she's in meetings all day. Oh, she's not here. She's at that big presentation downtown. Right, the restaurant group thing. Paige looked confused. Restaurant group? No, she's meeting with the Henderson Resort people. Big contract negotiation. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. Another lie, casually exposed. Of course, the Henderson account. I get her projects mixed up sometimes. It's so exciting. If they sign, it could be huge for the agency. Colin's been working really closely with Elise on the proposal. I'm sure he has. They make a great team, very collaborative. The way Paige said collaborative suggested she knew more than she was admitting. Well, I don't want to interrupt their collaboration. Tell Elise I stopped by. Will do. I left the office with another piece of confirmation and growing certainty that half the town knew about my wife's affair. That evening, Elise came home with an elaborate story about the Henderson meeting, complete with details about their resort expansion plans and timeline for the marketing campaign. She was a good storyteller, I'll give her that. If I hadn't known she'd spent the afternoon in a hotel room with Colin, I might have believed her. Sounds like a great opportunity, I said when she finished. It really is. Colin thinks it could lead to other hospitality accounts. Colin's very optimistic. He's a good boss, very supportive. I almost laughed at that. Supportive was one way to describe it. The next morning, I put the final piece of my documentation plan into place. Our house had a security system with cameras covering the driveway, front door, and backyard. I'd installed it 2 years ago after a rash of break-ins in the neighborhood. What I hadn't told Elise was that the system stored footage for 90 days and could be accessed remotely. I spent an hour reviewing recordings from the past month, looking for anything unusual. What I found was worse than I'd expected. 3 weeks ago, while I was at a real estate conference in Boston, Colin's Tesla had been in our driveway from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. 2 weeks ago, same thing. Last week, they'd been more careful, parking his car a block away. But the camera had caught them walking up our driveway together at 9:30 p.m. They'd been using our house, our bed. While I was out of town or working late, they'd been treating our home like their private hotel. I saved the footage to a secure drive and called Vivian. "How quickly can we move?" I asked. "What did you find?" I told her about the security footage, the hotel meetings, the lies Elise had been telling everyone from me to her own assistant. "Grant, this is good. Very good. With this level of documentation, we can move fast and aggressively." "How fast?" "I can have papers ready by Friday. Asset freeze, temporary separation agreement, the works." "Do it. There's something else you should consider. If Colin's married, his wife might be interested in what you've discovered." I'd thought about that. Serafina Sharp was a name on the company website, nothing more. I'd never met her, never seen her at company events. For all I knew, she was already aware of her husband's extracurricular activities. "Let me think about that," I told Vivian. But I was already thinking about it. And I was starting to realize that my wife and her boss had made a crucial mistake. They'd assumed I was too trusting, too passive, too focused on my business to notice what was happening in my own house. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Friday morning arrived gray and cold, typical for October in Maine. Elise left early for what she claimed was a breakfast meeting with potential clients. I knew better. Colin's Tesla had been parked 2 blocks away since 7 a.m. At 9:30, Vivian arrived at my office with a briefcase full of documents. "Everything's ready," she said, spreading papers across my desk. "Temporary separation agreement, asset freeze, restraining order if needed." I reviewed each document carefully. 3 years of marriage, reduced to legal terminology and financial calculations. "When do we serve her?" "That's up to you, but I'd recommend doing it somewhere public with witnesses. Less chance of an emotional scene." "I have a better idea." Elise's marketing agency was hosting a networking event that evening at the Harbor View restaurant. Half the business community would be there, including several of my clients and colleagues. It was exactly the kind of social gathering where Elise thrived, working the room with her practiced charm. "You want to serve her at her own event?" "I want to serve them both. Colin will be there too." Vivian raised an eyebrow. "That's aggressive." "They've been aggressive with my marriage. Turnabout seems fair." "Grant, I need to advise you that public confrontations can backfire. If you embarrass her too badly, it could affect the settlement negotiations." "Let me worry about that." The Harbor View restaurant occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. I'd sold the building to the current owners 3 years ago, back when Elise and I were still happy and planning our future together. I arrived at 6:30, 30 minutes after the event started. The room was crowded with familiar faces, business owners, professionals, the kind of people who kept small-town commerce running. Elise was near the bar, animated and glowing, holding court with a group of potential clients. Colin stood beside her, one hand resting possessively on the small of her back. I worked the room for 20 minutes, greeting people I knew, making small talk about market conditions and upcoming developments. Several people asked about Elise, commenting on how successful her agency was becoming. "She's very talented," I agreed, "very dedicated to her work." At 7 o'clock, I approached the bar where Elise and Colin were still entertaining their audience. "Honey," I said, loud enough for the surrounding group to hear. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Elise's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Of course. Excuse me, everyone." Colin started to follow, but I held up a hand. "Actually, Colin, you should hear this too. It affects both of you." Now I had their attention, and the attention of everyone within earshot. I pulled out 2 envelopes, handing one to Elise and one to Colin. "What's this?" Elise asked. "Legal documents. I thought you should review them before we discuss your future with the agency." Elise opened her envelope with trembling fingers. Her face went white as she read the first page. Colin, meanwhile, was staring at his envelope like it might explode. "Grant," Elise whispered. "What is this?" "It's a temporary separation agreement and asset protection documentation. I thought you'd want to review the terms privately, but since Colin's so involved in your business decisions lately, I figured he should be informed too." The group around us had gone quiet, sensing drama but not understanding the details. Colin finally opened his envelope. Inside was a copy of the hotel receipts, the security footage screenshots, and a note that read, "Your wife might be interested in your collaboration with Elise." His face flushed red, then drained to pale. "I think," I said to the watching crowd, "we should let them review these documents. Elise, we can discuss the details at home. Colin, you might want to have your own attorney look at your copy." I turned and walked away, leaving them standing by the bar with their opened envelopes and the growing realization that their secret was no longer secret. Behind me, I heard Elise call my name, but I didn't turn around. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 6 a.m. First Elise, crying and begging me to come home so we could talk. Then Colin, angry and threatening legal action for harassment. Then Paige, Elise's assistant, asking if the rumors were true. Then Rico from the gym, wanting to know if I needed anything. By noon, my voicemail was full and my email inbox was overflowing. The small-town gossip network had kicked into high gear. Vivian called at 2 p.m. "Well, you certainly made an impression last night. Any legal problems?" "Not yet, but Colin's attorney called this morning. They're claiming you're harassing their client." "With what? Hotel receipts and security footage from my own house?" That's what I told them. They backed down pretty quickly. "Good. What about Elise?" "She wants to negotiate. Apparently she's willing to agree to an uncontested divorce in exchange for a reasonable settlement." "Define reasonable." 50-50 split of marital assets, no alimony. I thought about that. 6 months ago, I might have considered it generous. Now, after everything I'd discovered, it felt like letting her off easy. Counteroffer. She gets her business, her car, and her personal belongings. I keep the house, the investment properties, and my company. Grant, that's pretty harsh. She used our house for her affair. She lied to clients, employees, and me for months. She gets to walk away with her dignity intact and her business operational. That's more generous than she deserves. I'll present the offer. That afternoon, I drove downtown to run errands and gauge the community reaction to the previous night's drama. At the bank, the manager asked if I needed help with any account changes. At the hardware store, the owner mentioned that he'd heard I might be selling the house. At the coffee shop, the barista gave me my order with a sympathetic smile and refused payment. By evening, it was clear that public opinion had swung decisively in my favor. Elise was being portrayed as the ambitious woman who'd betrayed her loyal husband, while Colin was the predatory boss who'd seduced a married employee. The narrative wasn't entirely accurate, but it was the story the town wanted to believe. Elise came home at 8 p.m., looking exhausted and defeated. "Grant, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "This has gotten out of hand. People are treating me like I'm some kind of monster." "Are you?" "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But I don't deserve to be humiliated like this." I looked at my wife, soon to be ex-wife, and felt something that might have been pity. Elise, you didn't make a mistake. You made a series of calculated decisions over several months. You used our house, lied to everyone we know, and thought I was too stupid to figure it out. I never thought you were stupid. Then what did you think? She was quiet for a long moment. I thought you wouldn't care enough to fight for me. You were right. I don't want to fight for someone who doesn't want to be here. So what happens now? Now you decide whether to accept my settlement offer or fight me in court with a judge who's seen the evidence. She nodded slowly. Your offer's not very generous. It's more generous than you'd get from a jury trial. I know. The next morning, Vivian called with Elise's answer. She'll take the deal. Her attorney wants to expedite the paperwork. How expedite? 30 days if we can get court approval. Do it. 3 weeks later, Elise moved out of our house and into a small apartment across town. Her marketing agency survived, though she lost several clients who decided they preferred working with someone less controversial. Colin wasn't as lucky. His wife Serafina, who turned out to be a formidable woman with her own successful career, filed for divorce and took half of everything he owned, including his Tesla. The last I heard, he'd left town for a fresh start somewhere in Florida. As for me, I kept my business, my house, and my reputation intact. More importantly, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's simply making sure everyone knows the truth. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I thought the drama was over. I was wrong. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing contracts for a new development project. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Grant Miller? Speaking. This is Serafina Sharp, Colin's ex-wife. We need to talk. I'd heard about Serafina through the gossip network that had chronicled every detail of our respective divorces. Successful interior designer, inherited money, reportedly took Colin for everything he was worth in their settlement. What can I do for you? I have information you might find interesting about your ex-wife and my ex-husband. Can we meet? An hour later, I was sitting across from Serafina at a quiet cafe outside of town. She was elegant in the way that money and good breeding create. Understated clothes, perfect posture, the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about paying bills. I'll get straight to the point, she said after ordering coffee. Colin and Elise didn't end their relationship when you exposed them. I felt something twist in my stomach. What do you mean? I mean they're still together. Colin moved to Portland, set up a consulting business. Elise has been driving down there twice a week for client meetings. How do you know this? Serafina smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. I hired a private investigator during my divorce proceedings. Old habits die hard. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photographs of Elise and Colin at a Portland restaurant, entering a downtown apartment building, walking along the waterfront like tourists. Why are you showing me this? Because they're planning something. My investigator overheard a conversation at the restaurant. They think you rushed the divorce settlement because you were afraid of what might come out in a trial. What could come out? I have nothing to hide. They don't know that. Colin's convinced Elise that you must have been hiding assets, maybe having an affair yourself. They're planning to challenge the divorce decree. I stared at the photographs, feeling anger build in my chest. On what grounds? Fraud, concealment of assets, coercion. It doesn't matter if it's true. They just need to create enough doubt to reopen the settlement. And you're telling me this because? Because Colin cost me 2 years of my life and a considerable amount of dignity. I'd prefer he not profit from his infidelity. What do you suggest? Serafina's smile became genuinely predatory. I suggest we make sure they understand that some fights aren't worth having. Over the next hour, she outlined a plan that was both elegant and ruthless. Colin's new consulting business was built on his reputation and connections in the Maine business community. Elise's marketing agency, while diminished, still depended on local clients who valued discretion and reliability. Both of their professional lives were vulnerable to the right kind of pressure. "I'm not interested in destroying them," I told her. "I just want them to leave me alone." Sometimes those are the same thing. That evening, I called Vivian and explained the situation. "Grant, if they're planning to challenge the divorce, we need to be prepared. But what Serafina's suggesting sounds like it could cross legal lines." "What kind of lines?" "Harassment, interference with business relationships, possibly extortion depending on how it's handled." "So we do nothing and let them drag me back to court?" "We prepare for court and make sure we win decisively. Or we find a way to discourage them that doesn't involve anything illegal." The next morning, I drove to Portland. Colin's consulting office was in a converted warehouse district, the kind of trendy space that looked successful, but probably cost less than a traditional office building. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:30, Elise's Honda pulled into the parking lot. I watched her enter the building, then waited another 20 minutes before following. The office directory listed Sharp Consulting on the 3rd floor. I took the elevator up and walked down the hallway until I found the right door. Through the glass panel, I could see Colin and Elise sitting at a conference table, documents spread between them. They looked comfortable together, like a real couple planning their future. I knocked and entered, without waiting for permission. "Grant!" Elise jumped up, her face flushing. "What are you doing here?" "I was in Portland on business. Thought I'd stop by and see how you're both doing." Colin stood more slowly, his expression wary. "This is a private office." "I'm sure it is. Nice space, Colin. Business must be going well." "Well enough." I looked around the office, noting the expensive furniture and high-end electronics. Impressive setup for someone who just moved to town, must have taken significant capital investment. "I manage my finances carefully." "I'm sure you do. Elise, I heard you're expanding your client base down here. That's great news." My ex-wife looked like she wanted to disappear. "Grant, why are you really here?" "I told you I was in the area, but since I have your attention, I thought you should know that people are talking." "What people?" Colin asked. "Business people, the kind who value discretion and stability in their professional relationships." I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo I'd taken of them at the Portland restaurant. "Small world, isn't it?" Elise went pale. "You're having us followed?" "I don't need to. You're not exactly hiding." I put the phone away. "Look, I don't care what you do with your personal lives. You're both adults. You're both divorced. You can date whoever you want." "Then what's the problem?" Colin demanded. "The problem is that I'm hearing rumors about challenges to divorce settlements, claims of hidden assets, that sort of thing. The kind of rumors that make people nervous about doing business with anyone involved." The room was quiet for a long moment. "I'd hate to see either of you damaged professionally by unfounded legal challenges," I continued, "especially when those challenges might bring unwanted attention to your relationship timeline." Colin's face darkened. "Are you threatening us?" "I'm sharing information, the same way information was shared with me about your plans." I walked to the door, then turned back. "Elise, you built a good business. Don't let personal decisions destroy what you've worked for. Colin, Portland's a nice city with a lot of opportunities. I'd hate to see you have to start over somewhere else." I left them standing in their expensive office, probably wondering how much I knew and how much damage I could do. The answer was, more than enough. 3 days later, Vivienne called with good news. Elise's attorney contacted me. They're withdrawing any plans to challenge the divorce decree. Just like that? Apparently, they've decided to focus on building their new lives rather than relitigating the past. Smart decision. Very smart. Especially since I may have mentioned that we'd welcome the opportunity to present additional evidence in open court. I hung up feeling something that might have been satisfaction. That afternoon, Serafina called. "I heard the good news," she said. "News travels fast. In small communities it does, I thought you should know that Colin's been telling people he's considering relocating his business to Boston. Really. Apparently, Portland doesn't have the growth opportunities he was hoping for. That's too bad, isn't it? By the way, I'm having a small dinner party next weekend. Nothing fancy, just some local business people. You should come. I appreciate the invitation, but I'm not much for parties lately. Think about it. It might be good for you to get back into the social scene. After she hung up, I realized that Serafina was probably right. I'd spent so much energy dealing with my failed marriage that I'd forgotten how to live my own life. That weekend, instead of working or brooding, I drove up the coast to Bar Harbor. The tourist season was over, leaving the town quiet and peaceful. I walked along the shore, ate lobster at a local restaurant, and talked to strangers who knew nothing about my personal drama. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Elise. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say thank you for handling everything the way you did. You could have made it much worse. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. We both made mistakes. I hope you find what you're looking for. Her response came quickly. I hope you do too. I deleted the conversation and drove home to my empty house, which no longer felt like a monument to failure, but like a foundation for whatever came next. The truth was, I'd learned something valuable from the whole experience. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making your enemies suffer. It's simply refusing to let them define your happiness. And sometimes, that's enough.